So today's topics are the working with the real estate agent. We're going to go over that form, and then we're going to go over all the pamphlets that are associated with this additional information that North Carolina puts out on their North Carolina Commission's website for for clients particularly. So it is not something that you have to, as an agent, give your clients. It's not like hey, this is a required disclosure or document. It's extra, but it is very beneficial. It covers you and what you're trying to explain to your client. You know how some people just don't grasp it. Well, this is the pamphlets and the brochures are additional info that is just amazing to have for your clients. So I'm going to show you all. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show you guys where it's at on the commission's website. And of course, I save everything to my desktop. So I've got a North Carolina brochures folder because at our office at Keller Williams, we have to provide these pamphlets. And this is just to cover ourselves, right? You know, it's like, hey, I've provided them to my client for an additional resource. Okay, so your client just has to sign off that, hey, I received them. If they read it, cool. If not, you can always refer back to that. Like if they have additional questions, if you're not ready to answer them, but definitely read through them. They're a question and answer pamphlet brochure type style. So it's, North Carolina has really just set us up as far as the many questions that come up and all the different situations that we have in North Carolina. So I will pull up my screens. Got a lot to show you. So let's do the site first. So where'd it go? Here we go. Not that loop. So we're at the ncrec.gov. So that is our North Carolina Real Estate Commission's website. Y'all are going to go to publications. Under the publications tab, click publications. It'll bring you to this screen. And then you go to your Q&A brochures. Okay, there is everything from closing, from beginning to end, what that looks like. If your client has questions about condos and townhouses and HOAs, there are PDFs here. So you can do the text only or the actual brochure. So the PDF I've got pulled up right here. They're kind of old school looking. They're really difficult to read, but whatever form, however your client, works, right? However you work. So if you need some color in your life, the questions are all the same here, or you pull it up as the PDF, the Word document. Okay, so Word document, easier to highlight, easier to say, hey, if you have a question about the differences between the condo and townhome, highlight the question, the answer's right below, so it's there. All of the pamphlets are easily in the PDF, the Word document form, easily 4 to 5 to 6 pages long, and that way you're covered. The North Carolina Real Estate Commissions, this is coming from them. You are just reiterating this. So this way your client has all the resources in the world. So we're going to run through these. I'm not going to go question by question. Obviously, I just want to show you all where these awesome resources are. Again, Keller Williams has our particular ones that we have to have our clients, our buyer clients, receive an initial that they've received them. So I tell everyone, download all this, save them to your external hard drive, your computer, anywhere. Always have them available because you never know what's going to come up. So this is where the brochures are. We will circle back. I've saved everything on my computer and I'll show you in that form. So let's get started with the working with real estate agent disclosure. So from my previous videos, we have gone over these forms, but I want to really hone in on this and really reiterate the purpose of this form. This form is not your buyer broker. This is not your listing agreement. This is you are starting to have a conversation with somebody. So you're starting to talk personal, you're starting to talk financial, you're starting to talk, hey, what do you think? You're starting to talk real estate. You're starting to initiate those conversations. North Carolina says you have to stop and you have to go over this form with that client. So I've got pulled up the one for the buyers. The sellers looks exactly the same. It just says for sellers at the top. Okay. So, and that's really what this form breaks down already in this box labeled important. This form is not a contract. Signing this disclosure only means you have received it. Okay. So this is really telling someone, listen, we're having this conversation as far as real estate's concerned. Let's talk in depth now more about what your options are, what my firm offers you, and make sure you are acknowledging what I am saying. Okay. So again, like I've said before, Keller Williams does not do dual agency, but North Carolina does. So if your office does do dual agency, you can. And then it's really important. I'm really going to try and hone in on the difference between dual agency and designated dual agency in North Carolina. So that's kind of what I wanted to hit on this training the most, because it's a big confusing topic, but I've got some visuals that I think will help because it's kind of helped me too. So if you ladies have any questions at all, please ask, or if you know of a different way that I can say it, because it's still, when you sit in front of a client and you're like, yeah, dual agency and designated dual agency, they're like, that sounds like the same thing, So we've really already gone through this form. So the note to the agent, check all relationship types up below that apply to this buyer and to your firm, right? So it's very important. You are going over the entire form, and then you will let this customer, potential client, know my firm offers this. Okay. My firm offers all, or my firm only offers this. Okay. So buyer agency, if you agree, the agent who gave you this form and the agent's firm would represent you as a buyer agent and be loyal to you. You may begin with an oral agreement, but your agent must enter into a written buyer agency agreement. So that's your buyer broker. Okay. You always want to check that. Dual agency will occur if you purchase a property listed by the firm that represents you. If you agree, the real estate firm and any agent with that same firm would be permitted to represent you and the seller at the same time. So a dual agent's loyalty would be divided between you and the seller, but the firm and its agents must treat you and the seller fairly and equally and cannot help you gain an advantage over the other party. Okay, I have a visual for this. All right, so this is from my continuing education courses that I took. And I really loved what this to me says it all, right? So dual agency, there's technically two ways in North Carolina. So one broker, so same firm, one broker represents buyer and seller. Or dual agency is broker A and broker B work for the same company, representing buyer and seller. Okay. This to us looks like designated dual agency, right? But it's actually a better visual here. Designated dual agency. Okay. So you see the difference. Broker A and broker B are not connected, right? They're not representing the same person under the same firm. They are designated. Lisa has buyer, Kara has seller under Keller Williams. Dual says Lisa has buyer, Kara has seller, but Lisa and Kara can represent both, right? Because we are under Keller Williams. All right. So it gets tricky. This is why Keller Williams does not do this, because it's just so, morally, how can, we get into code of ethics, blah, 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 but Virginia and North Carolina still allow it. So we still have to go over it. So the easiest way that I like to describe it to my clients is, listen, you and I have an exclusive relationship. You're allowing dual agency and designated dual agency because under North Carolina law, Jordan with Keller Williams, if she brings a buyer, you're still allowing her to be a part of the transaction because she's under the same roof. If you do not allow dual agency, that cannot happen. Okay. So we're still separate, we're still allowing that. If they allow dual agency, you have to get it in writing with them, what they allow you to do and what they do not allow you to do. Okay. So designated dual agency, obviously, very easy. We do it all the time, happens all the time. But the dual agency, it gets tricky, right? They're like, well, what can the listing agent tell the buyer's agent? The clients have to instruct that, right? Because the listing agent and the selling agent will have the right under that dual agency agreement to represent both parties.
Hey, Kara, are you looking at something? I'm not seeing, I'm just seeing the.
Are you seeing what buyer?
I'm still seeing that same screen too.
Get out of here. Oh my gosh. Hold on. I'm so sorry. I'm over here like, can you see
Okay,
my?
hold on, am I missing something? Oh, okay.
This makes more sense.
Okay.
Okay. So
And is there
this as well, because it has helped me a lot. A lot of people are like, this is too confusing. What it is if you are allowing for my sellers, right? For my sellers, we are allowing other KW agents to bring their buyer. We have an exclusive relationship. So we are doing designated dual agency, but they still have to sign off the dual agency to allow 2 Keller Williams agents to work the deal.
So a couple questions. One, is there a form that they can check off? Like, because most people don't know what we do. So like, how are they going to know what they allow you to do and what not to do?
So the listing agreement kind of runs through that. The listing agreement really breaks it down. And then the buyer's agreement still has that as well. They have to check one or the other. On the buyer's agreement, they need to check both. Because
is there also a reason why somebody would not allow like a designated dual agency?
That's a good question. If they just leave it up to the client, really. But this working with real estate form allows you as the agent to set the tone for your client. Hey, this is what my firm offers. This is what I can offer you. So you're not stuck in a pickle in the middle of it, right? And you're like, well, can I do dual agency? You know what I mean? So it kind of allows you to set the tone and say, listen, North Carolina allows A, B, and C. My brokerage allows A and C. Simple as that. Explain that, let it happen. And then on your forms, if you allow dual agency, your client just essentially has to initial and understand both, that you are allowing both to happen. So, and that's what North Carolina wants to see too. So Jordan, say if you and I do get into, at least I'm not excluding you on purpose to just not KW family here, come on. So if Jordan and I do get into, I've got the seller, Jordan's got the buyer, we got to make sure like, hey, it's already on the MLS that if we're allowing dual agency, it's out there, it's saying, yes, bring on everybody. And then the buyer just needs to understand, hey, this is now designated dual agency. We're not crossing this example right here. This is not happening. Jordan and I are not saying, hey, what you got? It's not, it is strictly dual agency. Can you guys see this one too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Did you change it?
Yep. So this is designated.
Can't see it.
Dang it. I want to do that.
So that you just discussed was just dual agent. Okay. Different screen. Now
The difference now.
Designated dual agent.
This is what we're used to, right? So if like me, I don't practice dual agency. What Virginia has the definition of. The definition of it in North Carolina is same house, same firm. So your clients, they need to allow dual agency in order for designated dual agency to happen. Okay. But explaining the difference is really where it's at. So designated dual agency, me, Jordan, same firm, cool. Those are our clients. There is
Mhm.
no, I have interest in the buyer. You know what I mean? Jordan didn't have interest in the seller, none of that. So,
So dual agency is together and designated agency is apart,
yep, under the same roof.
separate everything, but under the same roof.
That's right.
Okay.
But when you do your paperwork, they have to check both. Very, very important. Because then
Okay.
if your client only wants designated dual agency, according to North Carolina, they only want designated dual agency. They are eliminating dual agency in a sense. And so if another Keller Williams comes in, and you know what I mean, it just check both of them. Just
Okay.
cover yourself, cover your client for that. So let me pull up the working with real estate agents again. So yeah, so really like the breakdown of when you do tell someone about this designated dual agency, if you agree, the real estate firm would represent both you and the seller, but the firm would designate one agent to represent you and a different agent to represent the seller. Cool, clear cut. Dual agency. Dual agency will occur if you purchase a property listed by the firm that represents you. If you agree, the real estate firm and any agent, right? So that's where I really kind of emphasize that you're free game to anybody in my office, you know, kind of thing. So it's kind of this kind of pushes the fact of dual agency has to happen for this to happen. So just explaining everything. Yeah. And it's really for a buy side, you know, it's really telling them, look, as long as we have a designated dual agency agreement as well, you're covered when I am writing an offer for you on another Keller Williams home that is listed. So the loyalty will
Way to
stay.
explain it.
Yeah. Good. Yay.
Yeah.
Because I've been like, how am I going to explain this? It's so difficult to me because we're so hardwired, you know, for here.
No, that's perfect visuals. Yeah.
Awesome.
I like
And
visuals.
oh my gosh, my continued education course, that really helped me with
Mm.
that. So I will pass those to you guys. I know our clients are visual learners as well. So I will definitely I screenshot those from my phone because I was like, I need this somewhere. So so this is the brochure, the pamphlet for working with real estate agents. This goes over so many more questions, or that questions that come up often, right? But
Mhm.
especially when you're duly licensed, you're going to want to read this. You're going to want to go over these questions because they're going to come up. So what does the word agency mean? You know,
Mhm.
it breaks it down. What is an agency agreement? We know that. Is there a standard length of time for agency agreement? No. Is there a standard fee for real estate agents? No. Breaks it down. Questions and answers for sellers. I want to sell my property. What do I need to know about working with real estate agents? I mean, it literally, I mean, it's full. I mean, it's probably 15 questions on here, and it helps with breaking down the duties, right? Because that's a
Mhm.
huge thing when you're dealing with just dual agency and then designated dual agency. It's really the responsibilities and the duties and everything of that matter. So
Are you looking at the form again?
of course that you can't see. Ooh, why is it doing this?
So, can you see me now? Can you see me now?
I can
Can you
see
me now?
you. Can you see me? Gosh, thank you.
Oh, there you go.
Hey.
So this is, remember, this is just the Word document look of it. This is the actual pamphlet. Kind of 1980s, you know, kind of feel. So whatever you want to provide to your client. A lot of them are like, what are you sending to me that is all colorful? And I'm like, I'm just making sure you're getting it, first of all. And then I email them the Word documents. So like I was saying, it's same information. It's really just broken down to this question and answers brochure assumes that you are a prospective buyer or seller and answers common questions. So if after you have that conversation with your client and they're just like, I don't know what she just said, because it happens often.
Mhm.
That's why we send these, because it's definitely like, again, due diligence, buyer state, and you've got to just know your stuff. So if somebody is too timid to ask you, or they don't want to bother you. I mean, I've got clients all day long. They're like, I don't want to bug you. And I'm like, it's not a stupid question. Please ask me,
Yeah.
because I thought we went over it and I thought we were good, but we're not. So let's do it again. But North Carolina understands that it's a lot. So they've got these brochures in place. I mean, you're talking about, again, simple definitions to, the questions for sellers right here. I want to sell my property. What do I need to know? What is a listing agent's duties? What services might a listing agent provide? How is a listing firm compensated? I mean, it goes over it. It really covers us and helps us for everybody to understand, that the general realm of, hey, why should I hire a real estate agent? So
I need
what
to send this to that girl. Remember that girl I was trying to get to you?
girl?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, boy. Now they're renting.
Are they? Yeah.
Yeah, they're just going to stay in a rental because the company won't let them out. So they're like, forget it. We'll just rent for another year until we can. I said, okay.
And you know what? And in North Carolina, you know how Virginia, we say, look, buyer broker, it's with the firm, right? Go to the firm, email the broker. If you need to get out of your buyer broker agreement, that broker has to relieve you, not the agent.
Yeah.
And I really need to dig in on North Carolina too, because that to me, it's still kind of standard, but nobody has to let anybody go. And that's what I tell everyone when they come to me and they're already represented. I was like, look, listen, here's the deal. Kind of break it down to, if you don't want to work with me, my broker is going to want you to work with somebody in my brokerage. And that's pretty much standard across the board. So we're not losing your business. But if it's just unhappy across the board kind of situation, whatever your situation is,
Yeah.
you got to go to the top dog, and so it just sucks sometimes when they're just stuck. And
Yeah.
but again, it's because people are just uneducated and these agents are just throwing out these, agreements like, here, sign this, be my client. And they're not going over this stuff. Like,
yeah,
it is a contract. We are working together. So yeah. So definitely download these and send them to.
So in North Carolina, like if someone came to you and said, I just don't think we're a good fit in North Carolina, I could not let them go. I have to go to my broker and let them go.
You have to get permission for sure. You got to talk to your broker. Yeah. And that's ultimately in Virginia too. So just because that buyer broker is with the brokerage.
Got it.
Yeah. Just to make sure, and of course, whoever you're working with is going to ask, well, why? They're going to leave it up to you because you're working with them. But, they may be like, no, let's fix this. Or, that's why they're there is to really, we don't want to lose business. We want to make it right. If somebody's messed up along the way, just getting everybody else involved is not necessarily a bad thing. So it's the same deal in North Carolina. It's essentially up to us, but there are terms in, those, the buyer's agreement that covers us.
Yeah.
Okay. Even if our agreement expires, they're still obligated for 90 days. If they want to work with another agent, like there's a lot of terms in there that have to be completely terminated for them to not work with you and not pay you. So always go over the documents that you filled out and you had signed by your clients with your broker. If you get to that point.
Yeah.
So you know what you're covered for sure. So this lovely working with real estate agents is awesome. Like I review it often just because, if we don't have a lot of business, it's a lot of just refreshers and it's good for us. And it's good for our clients. So yeah. How to reduce the risk if dual agency occurs, that's when they break down designated dual agency. So it's here, it's in black and white for your clients. If they just aren't understanding how you're explaining it, you've got backup. So, coolio. So that was that one. Next one I've got pulled up is why test your well water. So a lot of these are literally, it's on the same screen. I promise. I'm not switching screens. So a lot of this stuff you're not going to run into often. And that's why it's important to provide all of it to your client from the jump of, hey, whatever type of house we're looking at, we could run into any of these situations. So let's get these papers in front of you. And Jordan, I thought you just put on some sunglasses.
No, they're my blue light glasses.
I love it. I don't know where mine are. Like, I love those. So why test your well water? So I've represented one client that tested their water before. One out of, I've probably done 17 or 18 deals in North Carolina now. And so this one's not popular, but again, good to know. It really is just, all this information is just key for these consumers to have now or later. So this one breaks it down. What should I do if my well water is contaminated? I mean, just the things that, like for me, I grew up in the city. I don't know what a well has to do with anything, so we're constantly learning. Well, I'm constantly learning about septic daily. So awesome, brochure to have for your clients. And I provide these up front. So, when we normally provide our lead-based paint brochures, all of this comes with it, and I
kind of like the C. diff.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to overload you with a lot of information. So take an evening and just review it, walk through it. And if something comes up that you're stuck on, you don't understand, call me. And that's what we can do. That's why these are in place. So this kind of skips around. There's no like order to them. The next question and answers is residential subdivisions and planned communities, HOAs. So North Carolina HOAs are super lenient compared to Virginia. super. There might be a resale disclosure. We may get, the resale certificate. We might. This really just, yeah. It really just breaks it down to, do I have to join? Do I have to pay association dues? Because sometimes, I've seen HOA dues that you guys know, if the pool is excluded, it's an additional amount. Or in a lot of North Carolina, you see boat ramps and water access being additional, or that's the only HOA due, and it's like $8, so it's very, very, I don't even want to say lesser than Virginia, but it's a lot easier, I think, so because in North Carolina, you have to list on your offer to purchase the president, his or her contact information to get a hold of them. Like, you are speaking to the president of the HOA. It's not admin, we're going in circles. You're speaking to the president to get the information. So it's pretty cool. So again, this one just.
That's in North Carolina?
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I've got Jennifer with me too.
Hey girl, how are you? Glad you were here. Yes, good. So what happens if an owner fails to pay fines? I mean, again, it literally just, it points them in the right direction. So again, you guys review it, and then your client will also review it, just to make sure that everybody understands, the possibles that are going to come up. So next, offer and acceptance. So we have to provide our sellers a sample copy of the offer to purchase. Okay, so they know what's coming. After you roll through your listing paperwork with them, you must provide a sample of the offer to offer to purchase, for them to understand, because in North Carolina, you roll through your listing agreement and you roll through their responsibilities and the things that are expected of them, the things that are expected to stay, all that jazz. And then the offer to purchase comes, and there's a little bit of more in-depth information, and it actually covers the seller. So a lot of stuff is you're going to run through a lot in the listing documents, obviously. But say a situation came up for me that the buyer asked us I represent the seller. The buyer asked us in their offer to pump the septic, just pump, not inspecting, just pumping it. We were like, cool, whatever, it's $300. And then we get to due diligence and we counter that portion of the septic, because the buyer is now requesting $10,000 worth of repairs. So my seller thinks it's very fair to now put the septic pumping on the buyer. So he's giving him 10 grand. He better include that septic pump in there. So now the question is, so the buyer is still in his due diligence time frame. Can he pump it while during the due diligence time frame? Yes, he can. But if he does this pump and damage happens or more stuff comes up, we have agreed, we have it in writing now, that my seller is not responsible for any more repairs. Because one, it's not a septic inspection, it's just a pump. No inspector told this buyer that it needed to be pumped. So now there is a possibility, there's a liability that could come up. And all of this is found in the offer to purchase. The seller wouldn't know this information based off the listing documents. So in the offer to purchase, it outlines, hey, I think it's paragraph 4, subparagraph E, just did this last night. It says, hey, the buyer's agent, or their contractor does any damage to the property, they're responsible. So again, that's why we provide the sample of it to our sellers, and we walk them through every line, because if something comes up, and you can give them, those examples of, hey, what if, this, that, and the third comes up? Am I reliable? And they also ask, hey, can the due diligence period be done now because he's asked for so much? I said, you have to put it in writing, or he's going to stick with, his original due diligence timeframe. So it's, again, all of that is found in the offer to purchase. So please provide the sample to your client, really roll through it. And of course the typical questions, does my offer have to be in writing? What should be in my offer? And again, this is kind of representing the buyer side, but helps you with the seller side as well. So how does acceptance occur? Like really the simple things, and it helps us too. Like, because VA and North Carolina are so different, just nice refreshers. So yeah.
So you send just a blank.
So there is a sample. So I will show you. I think I've had
Okay,
it.
sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. The commission's website has an offer to purchase sample, and it's labeled the watermark sample on there.
Okay.
Yep.
Do they update that every time they update the contract?
They do. Mm-hmm.
Do they update the contract as much as the Virginia one does?
They do not.
Praise Jesus.
Yep. They did July of 2021, and then the time before that was probably 2019. So of what I've been seeing on the date. Yeah. So it's not every 6 months, but they do review, and it's not every 6 months, thank goodness. So yeah. All right. Home inspection.
And when you're at that point, what point when you're with your client, do you give that to? So when you find a home and you're going to go put an offer on it, is that when you do it, or do you give it to them like when you first start forming your relationship, or what?
When you grow your relationship, I think it's very important, because so this next one, home inspections, a lot of the bulk of the questions comes
Mhm.
from after you get them under contract, and a lot of it is we want them to make a knowledgeable choice prior to. So
Okay. Yeah.
definitely provide all of these, beforehand as soon as you can.
Yeah, I like that. Give them homework.
Yep, I do. And I really
Make them be a little bit more responsible for their
I've
part in this.
I've only had positive feedback on all of this. Yeah. And I pre-warn them, hey, it's a lot. It's a lot. But it's very important. And I was like, and it's just a resource. I was like, look, this is at your leisure. If you don't want to look at this, don't look at it. You don't have to. If you do, it's there. And again, in our office, we make sure that they sign off that they've received it. So
yeah,
it's not, we're covering ourselves. I always do Keller Williams documents and North Carolina documents, signature prompt. I put out all of that in one. And then And then if we're doing it at the time of offer too, so we know how this market is, right? We meet with somebody and we could be writing an offer that evening for them.
Yeah.
So it's really to make it very clear, I don't put all this documentation into one signature prompt. So
Yeah.
if we're writing an offer that is separate, that's one. Then I tell them, I'm like, look, this one's going to be labeled Keller Williams documents and North Carolina pamphlets. Get to that one when we get to that one, like whatever they feel, right? So if we've got time before we can do the offer, I do the pamphlets first because it's very important. So, yep. But just make sure that you've definitely been over the working with real estate agent, not that one, working with real estate agent form, at least shown it to them. Hey, we're working together, just so you know, and then, explain, this is not our contract. I will send you our exclusive, hey, we're working together, our buyer broker, but this is what's most important to North Carolina to cover you. So,
okay.
Yep. Because
you need both, right?
Say that again.
You need both?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, you do. So a lot of people actually print these and keep them with them. So I don't know how many conversations we have at a bar or a restaurant that leads to, oh, I'm going to start working with you. You know what I mean? But they're saying, hey, at least pull this up and say, hey, listen, I'm a realtor, I'm a broker in North Carolina. I understand that you have interest in, in real estate and purchasing or selling. I am obligated to go over this form with you if you've got a couple minutes, just to know that, especially if we're exchanging numbers at this point, like nothing, don't leave anything implied. That's what this form is for. It's saying, look, this agent, this broker that has gone over this information with me, and sometimes they don't have to sign it. And that's also another thing I learned in my continued education. As long as you are presenting this, you are giving it to them. Hey, this is what I wanted to go over with you. Some people are, it's how some people are. They don't want to sign this, especially if they have no intention to work with you, or if they haven't been honest, or whatever the case. But give it to them because that covers you. Okay.
So would it be best to just, instead of printing it off, to keep an email and
Yes.
send it via PDF?
Yep.
So you got tracking.
Mm-hmm. And we had questions of, well, does a picture suffice? So say you've got this and they say, hey, well, just send it to me. Or, however it works, a text message will suffice with having this in there as a photo, if you're sending it as a photo, right? As long as you are giving the information to the customer, to the client, you're good.
Cool.
Yep.
I have a quick question. Do you lose a lot of people that are interested when you have to, say, okay, now that we're kind of having this conversation, I need to go over this with you.
No,
it gets to this professional type thing, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, we're just talking.
So I make sure that they understand where there's a line, right? So yes, we're being personable, we're being people, but I also have a responsibility, as my license holds me to okay. Once we're having this conversation, I do just need to tell you about this form. Mm-hmm. And that's where you can kind of make it not so like, here's some documents, or whatever. Right. That's why, we're saying, hey, sign away, to keep it still friendly.
Here, sign.
Yeah, right. You can still keep it professional. You still keep it, to your comfort level. Okay. Have it on your phone. I have it also as a file on my phone to say, hey, I just want to let you know, like, hey, I don't go off of implied relationships or oral or verbally agreeing to, hey, we're working together. North Carolina, I have to just give you this. So that way you can send them a quick email or a text of it and say, look, I just want to make sure that you understand that these are different types of agencies. And that's where the working with real estate questions and answers pamphlet comes from, is as an agency. because if it is a real quick conversation, but they now have this in their possession, which is good, they can actually refer back to, quick definitions and stuff like that.
Okay.
If they kind of, because, you could send this to them and they'd be like, okay, bye. They cut the conversation short. So it's
Yeah.
really just making sure that you've done this step.
Yeah.
So that North Carolina wants to make sure that you just don't skip this step, because we don't want to confuse anybody, or, we're making sure that, hey, you're sharing confidential information with me now. I need to disclose this to you.
Okay. A really good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're telling me your finances or who you're doing this and that and the third. I need to make sure that you understand, and not really just understand, of saying, hey, how do you want to be represented and how can I represent you? That's what this form says.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Because we can have a conversation all day long, right? And we'll be like, cool, Jen wants to work with me in 6 months. And then she'd be like, no, I don't, so this, we know how it is. This really kind of helps plant the seed, is what we like to see. Like, hey, you can have a conversation with anybody, and people are open books, and sometimes they just overdo it. And it's like, okay, all right, let's pump the brakes. Let's make sure that you understand when we are talking about real estate and you are talking about it to a broker, we'll make sure that the parties understand where each other's at. So yes, ma'am. So we could keep it moving. We've done subdivisions. I mean, there's offer and acceptance. So really this one breaks down for your buyer. Home inspections. What is a home inspection? Can one perform a home inspection? Where should I get a home inspection? What's this question? In my home purchase, I've chosen to sign the standard offer to purchase and contract form, which many real estate and legal professionals use. It states that I have the right to have inspections to determine the condition of the house during a due diligence period, with a home inspection, identify all problems at the home, and then it answers for you. So it's awesome, of, hey, the Home Inspector Licensure Board standards of practice do not require home inspectors to report on wood destroying insect. It breaks it down. Like, hey, this is what you expect. So I really push this one with everybody, especially one if they're waiving it. Good, bless America. If they are waiving it, especially if they're new and if they haven't purchased in that state before. Okay, so they're like, yeah, I've bought plenty of homes before. They really need to read this, because codes and standards change year to year, especially for home inspectors. So yeah, how do I request a home inspection and who will pay for it? I mean, it breaks it down. So it's awesome.
Are the prices about the same in North Carolina as they are in Virginia?
Yeah. Yeah, I really don't see a flux in it. A lot of the guys that I use are just still doing by square footage. And they'll give military discount, and they'll do, other things. And now a lot of the companies offer, they've teamed up with termite and moisture companies and stuff like that. So, yep, practice the same. Next one, fair housing. Huge, right? This is especially important. This is, we don't see it a lot these days, but we are seeing it in different areas, right? So do the fair housing laws apply to all housing transactions? Yes, except for the following. People need to understand that, especially the type of client that you're representing. So multi-family dwellings, everything that we've trained on and, been through. This breaks it down for our client in a really good way. So especially if you've got clients that tend to run that way and that, get this in front of them. So steering, discriminating, advertising, blockbusting. So this is a really good one, just because one, it reminds me of going through our training, going through school. And then it just really emphasizes to the client how important it is, and it's still a thing, and to not do it. So, okay. Earnest money. So what is earnest money? And especially in North Carolina, difference between earnest money and due diligence. Again, sorry, I'm getting very stuffy. The purchase to contract goes over the difference between due diligence and earnest money. So again, very important to break it down to your seller, the difference. And, a lot of it is, when we get an offer in, what does your seller want to see? Does your seller want to see due diligence, or do they prefer earnest money? So it's being able to explain it is very important. So if you still have questions about that, ask me after. So see, is earnest money the same as a due diligence fee? No. And it breaks it down. So I saw, Lisa, you'll get a kick out of this. I saw on TikTok that it was a North Carolina agent, and she was like, listen, she broke down due diligence and earnest money, and she broke it down, and she's like, I'm saying this in English, but she was, I just thought it was very funny that it came on my page, and I was just like, man, like, okay, so it's not just me that, especially if you're licensed elsewhere, you're like, what is due diligence and what is it for? It's actually, now that I've really gotten more experience with it, it's actually pretty good, pretty cool for the seller, because you're taking your house off the market for 3 to 4 weeks. You're not just taking it off for your home inspection time frame like we do in Virginia. So it really can make the difference. So when you're explaining that to your buyer as to why, because due diligence covers your inspections, your appraisal, your approval, it covers everything. So,
Oh, wow.
oh yeah, that's why it's a long time frame.
Okay.
So it's not just inspections. Your buyer must be approved and be able to buy the house before that due diligence comes.
So all the way up until closing.
Pretty much. Yeah. So I normally see settlement, 40 days, and then due diligence is like a month.
So, I mean, what happens that they find something out and then they're like, okay, I mean, that's almost like, using a contingency. It's like, hey, I don't like this. Can they get out? Oh,
but that's why, and that's why sellers like to see due diligence.
Yeah.
Because they're taking their house off the market for a month for this to get it together, but the buyer has the opportunity to peace out anytime. They'll get their earnest money back, but they won't get that due diligence back. So
that's awesome.
I mean, it's pretty, it makes sense.
Not good for the seller, but be good for my buyers.
Right. And that's exactly why I think North Carolina just won't do away with it, because if the buyer is taking a month, the seller needs something, just in case, because then the buyer can get out for no reason at any time. And it literally says buyer can get out for no reason before due diligence is up. So very important to get your seller something.
What are you seeing as average amounts for due diligence versus EMD? Because I know, like, here in Virginia, we're usually seeing $1,000 as kind of the new standard minimum, even though there's no standard minimum. But $1,000 to $5,000 for EMD. What does that look like in North Carolina versus what does the due diligence look like?
So what I do, right? All of us good agents, we call the other agent and say, hey, listing agent, what does your seller need? What are they looking for? So I make sure I kind of weigh it out. What is most important to them? Is due diligence more important to them, or is earnest money? So whatever the feedback is with that. So if due diligence is more, I just really get together with my buyer, and it's all about that property, right? We'll say, listen, if you want this house and that you are going to close on it, because they get their due diligence back at closing, as long as they make it there. That's the difference. So
so it doesn't go, it's not applied, it doesn't go directly to the seller automatically if you close.
Correct.
But the EMD does?
No.
Okay.
So the due diligence, it's made out to the seller, right? It's money to the seller, but if they go to closing, it gets applied. It's a second earnest money in a way.
Okay.
So
oh wow. So
that due
you could
diligence,
not have a due diligence period, or you could, And they both operate in the same manner.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or
Remember,
you could really put a good offer and say, hey, just keep it, you know?
Yep. Yeah.
Yay.
I mean, or you can make your earnest money non-refundable. Like you can do a lot in this market. So, but yes, so I have seen, I'm trying to remember what I did for mine, Jordan, for my purchase. I think I did $5,000 in due diligence and 1,000 in earnest money. Just it's peace of mind, like I know I'm buying this house. I know it's going to be great. And if it's not, whatever, because the due diligence timeframe, I'm not saying, hey, I'm just doing my home inspection for informational purposes. No, I'm doing my due diligence. There's possible repairs. So could the seller come back and say, well, after negotiations and such, we'll say, hey, well, your due diligence fee or your earnest money, everything else is negotiable, right? But the stronger your due diligence is, the better, and I've heard mixed reviews about the VA not wanting to see such high due diligences because obviously, that's money that the client is losing out on, and that's any lender, but there's really no restriction. So lenders will try to say, hey, keep it as low as possible, obviously, to protect the buyer. But really that is something you and your buyer talk about. What's most important to the seller? What can they do? What can they, say, hey, what money can you live without? Because if we have to terminate this contract, you're not getting it back. So,
yeah.
But if we make it to the finish line, it is applied.
Right.
So,
Maybe depending on how you write the offer.
Yeah. So it really is. And then that's the most important about the due diligence is you do get it back if you buy the house.
Yeah.
It gets applied. Yes. Because everyone's like, oh, it's just free money. I'm like, no, it's not free money. It's free money to the seller if you back out of the contract.
You bail. Right. Okay.
And I think what I've seen too is higher due diligence is going, and then if your buyer has to ask for a request, the seller is more enticed to entertain them. You know what I mean? So it's you're kind of sweetening the deal. So
yeah.
Yep. So
The question on that real quick. If a higher due diligence, if you have a higher due diligence, you said the seller is more likely to do repairs potentially. To me, it would be the opposite, where sellers would be like, no, I'm not going to do these repairs because if you walk away, this money's mine.
So yes, it can be twofold, right? So if you're representing the buyer that has dished out $10,000, for a due diligence, I am pushing and I'm not going to get out of my contract until I absolutely can't hold off anymore. And that's going to drive the seller crazy because the seller can't back out of it at all. Okay. You know what I mean? So it's really, how it is. And you know how people are, it's strategic and it could go both ways, right? The seller can be an a-hole and it's just, nope, go ahead and back out. And it's just really, if your buyer can hold on, if you have
so it can go either way. You can use that as
absolutely
leverage, like,
because
okay, well, let's wait till day 29 then.
Right. Absolutely. It's like, hey, man, like we'll see it because between, I've seen the due diligence 2 weeks. I've seen it 4 weeks, and if things just go sour in the middle, it's, like, especially if the seller is just like, nah, I'm not going to do it. The buyer doesn't have to do anything until they can't anymore, so as long as they're within their due diligence time frame, they can hang out. If they know that.
Could they technically be looking for another house and go under contract on another house and then just like be okay with losing that due diligence fee and then release the last day to seller being an a-hole?
I mean, if you guys know that the seller is not agreeing to anything, like you pretty much have it in writing that there's no negotiations. And I mean, why not? Yeah. But, and then because, what'd you say, Lisa? Sorry.
Isn't it PDF?
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we got this class.
you're good.
It's about to start too.
No,
I'm
you're
so
good, honey.
sorry.
Yeah, if you gotta go, just let me know. I'll send you all that.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much.
welcome.
See you next month
Yes, ma'am.
or talk to you before. Okay.
Yes.
Bye.
Hi, honey. So yeah, I've seen it work both ways. It's been tricky. It's been like, okay, man, if you want this deal done, you're either gonna agree or we're just gonna hang out for 15 more days, so it's your
Both sides
prerogative.
have an opportunity to be an a-hole.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah. And you can just really push it to where it's like, man, I just gave you 10 grand up front and you're not going to do anything. Like, and so it's all situational, and did the seller know that these problems existed, or was it a surprise to everybody? Are we renegotiating? And then you can just say, hey, well, let's not touch that money and let's renegotiate something purchase price or something else. You know what I mean? So a lot of the times I don't like to touch that money. Earnest money, yeah, because it's being held by escrow. But it's definitely something that I always advise my people, let's not touch your due diligence. Let's not, mess with that. If it's brought up, then that's game. But yeah.
Okay.
But I've done 0 before. I've done none. I've done 500. I've done 5,000. So
Okay.
yeah, it's just the seller. It really is, because some people could care less. So,
Cool.
and a lot of people, just making sure the client understands that the due diligence time frame covers the whole approval. So appraisal has to happen, all inspections. I mean, the requested repairs need to be negotiated. I mean, you name it, it's got to happen within that. So
Does that include the walkthrough? Is the walkthrough included in the due diligence?
I haven't seen it. I don't think it is. I'm going to double check, because there is a section in there that talks about the walkthrough. Then the seller's responsible, because as long as it's you're entitled to it. I don't believe it has to fall into the due diligence timeframe. I'll triple check for you.
And then last question, then I know we've got to get off because
No,
we're at time. So if the due diligence money is made out to the seller, do the sellers then cash that check and that amount is then taken out of their proceeds at closing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. It can be worked that way, or the seller can just hang on to it. I mean, it's really their prerogative. I mean, just to tell your people, hey, don't spend this money and then not have anything to give back. So
yeah.
Because it is made out to them. Like, the due diligence is in their name.
Because couldn't technically, so what happens if the check doesn't clear then? Like, if the check is made out to the sellers and it's in the seller's name and the check doesn't clear, like the buyers are like, no, never mind. And they take all that money out of the account.
So I think that's why they advise the seller to cash it and just hold it. Yeah. So I tell my people, hey, cash it, put it in an account that you're not going to touch. Okay. Because if you've got to give it back at closing, you can either say, hey, here it is, or just take it from our proceeds.
Okay. Cool.
Yep. Yes, I am.
Cool.
Yeah. So all of these are actually on Brokerment.
Okay. Cool.
And the checklist when you're going through, with your buyer, they're in there, which ones we need to send. So a lot of these do need to be sent. I send all of them. And we've also added the lead. North Carolina has a lead one, but these are really awesome to read. If you've got, some time in your life to read them.
I need to get them on an audiobook.
Yeah, girl. Can we do that? That'd be awesome.
Make a podcast.
Yeah, that'd be sweet. So then real estate closings, right? It covers that. I don't know. And then that's my one. Yeah. So, I mean, it even goes into, different deeds, and if what happens if the property is damaged or destroyed after I sign the purchase contract, but before closing, like responsibilities, right? As we always like to make sure in situations like that. So it covers a lot of them. I actually haven't read this one, so I'm going to read this one.
Cool.
Yeah. But yeah, that's really it. So the brochures and pamphlets, I am a huge fan of, if you can't tell. And these, again, these are updated with, I'm gonna stop sharing, updated with the contracts as they go. So, but yeah, definitely. And then the sample of the professional services and the sample of the offer to purchase is just pertinent when we're talking to our sellers. So,
Where is that at? Is that on the North Carolina Real Estate Commissioners?
and then it's in Brokerment too. It's under the North Carolina listing checklist or the North Carolina buyers checklist.
Okay.
Lucy got it all for us, girl.
Of course she did.
Yes, yes. Well, thanks for being here. I don't have people ever, so I just love these. So I hope that helped a little bit of just like what's expected of us, especially when we first talk to people. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I submitted my application last week, so any day now.
awesome. I'm gonna stop recording. Thanks for joining us. See you next month.